Hello and welcome to Transforming Worlds.
We're going to get diving deep. Are you ready? That everybody who lives a fulfilling and authentic life naturally wants to shine their light in the world. On my own transformative path is actually really immersing myself in the unknown and which is kind of like a paradox, a state of dysregulation. And what I mean with coming home to ourselves is to no longer abandon our inner child.
In today's episode, we speak to none other than Mick Hendrikx. Mick is a reintegration coach and the founder of 𝘍𝘰𝘳𝗧𝗏, a pioneering agency that redefines sick leave support through a holistic approach to well-being. Instead of simply working around limitations, 𝘍𝘰𝘳 supports people as whole individuals, fostering emotional resilience and teaching essential life skills to enable a smooth, successful, and sustainable return to work. A passionate dreamer and creator, Mick helps people uncover their deepest desires and build a foundation to create fulfilling, purpose-driven lives. When he's not coaching, Mick finds joy in nature, snowboarding, hiking, as well as in international communities, meaningful connections, interior design DIY projects, and weightlifting. This is a bit of a personal episode, an episode where we speak about what reintegration is about, the role of work in our lives, and how we can use that space to unleash joy, potential, and wiggle ourselves free from the expectations of others. Tune in. Hello, Mick, and welcome to Transforming Worlds. How are you today?
Hey, Carola. Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing really grand. How are you?
Oh, excited for this conversation, which is going to be maybe a little bit personal for me because our roles are now reversed. You used to be the one coaching me, and I'm now the one asking the difficult questions. So very excited.
Yeah.
So tell us, what is transforming for you these days?
What is transforming for me these days? I think transforming for me these days, in terms of like how I would describe it, is to go off the beaten path and forge new paths, which aren't always logical or rational. So they're not always mind-based, but they're coming from a place of intuition, desire, and heartfelt motivation.
But you don't go through the world through thought, you go through the world through feeling. So what is that hidden force that keeps bringing you back into the space of thinking and logic? And what is that?
The force that keeps, oh, whoa, oh, you're good. Yeah, I can
I
tell.
told you the roles are reversed now.
What is, wait, can you repeat that one? Oh,
so you said to me, what's transforming is you're moving away from the kind of mental, brainy, logic, rational world and diving deeper into the space of going off the beaten path into, exploring through feeling, through art, through desire. These are your words.
Yeah.
But obviously that means that if you're transforming towards that, there's something that has been keeping you from doing that in the first place, which knowing you is your more primary nature. So what is that force? Because I think more of us are having this problem.
So I believe it is programming. The way we've been raised in society from generations onwards too. So also from a place of family, the role models I had, I will talk for myself, the role models I had. And to be quite frankly, I think my nervous system adapted to feeling safe in that environment. So to be quite frank, when I am on my own transformative path, is actually really immersing myself in the unknown and which is kind of like a paradox, a state of dysregulation. Because if you grew up in a place where you always lived from the mind, always from the rational, you cannot really trust your heart, your intuition, then of course there's going to be a very scary territory, right? So I would say that's what's keeping me back. And I would also say that it's a place of balancing, meaning the new world for me is not just, oh, everything is about feelings, everything is about desires. I think there's a time and place for everything. And that there are also a lot of benefits to operating from the mind and structure and rational. And I find my biggest, I would say, challenge, but also place of growth is balancing those two. So instead of going like one way to another, to integrate it. And also, as we talked before about sometimes the seasons, that there are certain seasons in life.
So you talk about integration. What is integration? And your work is on reintegration. So how are those things related?
About integration. I think integration is about embracing the full spectrum of what is. So also of yourself, right? If we talk about like most of my works with people also with mental health, well-being, and it's about like fully accepting and understanding all parts of us.
And what is reintegration then?
And reintegration, that's going to sound so corny, but it is the tagline of Revive. Reintegration, I would say, is navigating back to flow, is coming back into motion, finding the balance of these different elements that are serving you where you're at in your life in that given time and place.
I could say I'm asking for a friend, but I'm actually asking for my listeners because I want to frame this as we dive into your work. Reintegration suggests that you are reintegrating into those systems and structures that are rigid and keeping us with a logical mind. And I wanted to have you have this as an open question because in your philosophy, and as I have experienced it, this is really about, as you say, embracing wholeness in yourself and in the imperfection of everything that is, and reintegration from that space. Because in the current society, whenever anyone is unable, for whatever reason, to perform at work, and therefore needs to do a work of reintegration, the interpretation is that you are putting people back on the saddle so that they can go and perform again. But there is something in there that is transformative. That when you say going back to flow, it's not the flow of events unfolding in front of you through your calendar and schedule and activities and busyness, but it's somewhere else. Where is that flow?
It's the flow. I like to think of the sessions and of the real value we offer people is to come back home to themselves. And that builds upon the fact that everybody who lives a fulfilling and authentic life naturally wants to shine their light in the world. And to your point, we have certain structures in place. Most of us from a place of survival or lack of inner knowledge or circumstance, they pick a certain career path. Old belief systems of, oh, yeah, it's like a linear line your whole career. So you become that it's a very straight path. And yeah, when you talk about reintegration, and specifically the work we do with Revive, is that there is a new point where you get to start over, basically, and you get to redefine and also choose what suits you best in terms of work. So it's kind of like it offers an opportunity. It's always a little bit of a double-edged sword because obviously people we talk to, they have like a very big range of health problems that can be mental health, physically. But it's basically to use that momentum, even though that's a negative momentum, to also create a new baseline in their lives and to figure out, hey, given, especially in the Netherlands, things are very well managed, that you have, you're financially supported. Given that you're financially supported, now let's navigate to a place of abundance. How would you make this choice again? How would you like to shine your light in this world again? And this brings about incredible transformations because most of us, I think, if not every one of us, they got to make certain choices at a very young age where maybe they haven't really fully understood themselves yet, or it's just choices based off pure financial gain. And as we all grow older later in life, we also our values change, right?
So there's
And
incredible wisdom in what you're saying. This wasn't always what you did. What brought you here?
right.
What discomfort did
Oh,
you experience that made you feel, hey, I need to be in this space. I can be of value in this space, and you are. So what led you there?
we're gonna get dive in deep. Are you ready? I've been always someone who evolved in time. So I have a background in, like I studied investment banking. I lived and worked in New York. I worked there in fashion show production, which was completely something different. Then I moved back to the Netherlands, did an MBA in marketing. And then from that moment onwards, I moved into corporate marketing, usually regional. So for the global teams and rolling out campaigns for local teams. And I gotta say, I was really well, I must say, not in the beginning. I was not super happy in the beginning. My last employer was Microsoft, was freaking amazing. I had such a blast. It was really cool. What I liked the most was actually the people I got to work with. And then also, because I got to work with a lot of internationals. I had 5 countries underneath me. And that really excited me. Now, the thing is that the actual, looking back in hindsight, right? The material I was working on didn't really feel like super meaningful necessarily. So it was great. It was a really fun job. I got to work with a lot of great people. I learned a lot too. But it wasn't like a career where I thought like, oh, forever and ever. But it was also not at the point of doing this or of changing this. And what led me into this field of work is actually that my whole world flipped 180. So I became actually suddenly very ill with Lyme disease, and I completely lost control of all facets of life. I was a vegetable for a very, very long time. I'm talking like literally almost like 2 years. And I couldn't really do much. I went through the whole circuit, medical circuit. They couldn't figure out. They only found out later that it was Lyme. Um, and funny enough, I also got into reintegration because that's part in the Netherlands of the reintegration plan. And I got assigned a truly wonderful reintegration coach. And together with her, she let me be very free, which was amazing. So I was very eager to try different things. And then at some point, I asked her, like, hey, could I maybe work for you? Can I like try that out? Because I think, I've been into this whole process. I can relate a lot to these people. And also, like, I understand what that experience is like. Granted, look, everybody has their own unique experience, right? So it's not like, oh, I experienced this, so it means that they must experience it like that too. But it did make me feel, or it did make me much more attuned to what people could need in situations like that and how I could best support them. Then eventually, she helped me. She basically gave me some of her clients to support in this trajectory. And what was really cool is that she let me be fully free. And I started noticing with the people that I guided to focus less on the whole structure and protocols, but more about their well-being and how, like a journey of self-discovery, how they best can love themselves and how they can be their best healthy adult, I like to call it, and really like more start a trajectory actually of becoming their own healthy, loving, and nourishing parent, which means yeah, I mean, that can go very deep. I'll leave that maybe
Oh
for
no,
later.
I'll go right deep with you on that one because I think I can disclose my own story. So
Yeah.
you can't, haha. No, but
Yeah.
seriously, I came to you because I was in a situation as a caregiver, which was totally unexpected. Like you, my whole world flipped 180, and I did a TED talk about that. So it's, I
Mhm.
really made a lot of work to get the story out there because I think it's very valuable. These
Yeah.
situations teach us not only compassion for ourselves, but compassion for our fellow human being, which is what you were describing just now is really like your heart flew open. You had these skills, but suddenly you were able to bring your heart into the mix. And
Yeah.
I know for one that you do that. And in
Thank you.
yeah, and in looking at how you could help me out, you're like, well, you seem to have things pretty sorted. What do you need? And I said, I need you to be my mom, which
Oh,
was
I
the
remember that.
archetype, right?
Yeah.
I meant the archetype. Like I have a mom, I
Yeah.
love her, and I have a great relationship with her, but I needed to connect with my own inner mother. And as you say,
Mhm.
the healthy adult within. And because I had been doing all of these activities of care, I had forgotten to do that for myself. And I kind of needed to reintegrate. So bring that back into my own sense
Mhm.
of flow and livelihood so that I could start doing that and re-engaging from that space for myself. But what
Yeah.
are reasons why, because people don't talk about that, but what are reasons why people come into this space? What are your clients bringing as the main triggers for this transformation that they go through?
I would say most of them, yeah, so most people I coach are people with burnout or psychological, I like to use the word adaptations instead of disorders, because oftentimes when you listen to someone's story, it sounds like a natural evolvement of the nervous system, um, rather than that there's something wrong with them. Um, so I would say mostly like burnout and yeah, anxiety adaptations, depression. Um, yes, and also sometimes like more physical. So think of like physical head injuries that can take really like a very long time sometimes to recover. And I would say if you talk about like purely like psychological challenges, what you mostly see is emotional immaturity. And I don't mean that in a degrading way. I mean that more in a way of people have not always, I think many of us actually have not always, including myself, have not always received the right modeling, like a parent that mirrors us, that like understands, so that it helps us understand our own inner world, our own emotions, how to process these emotions, what our needs are, how do we communicate these needs, what our boundaries are. Um, so there's that. And then, uh, yeah, and then basically, if you think about it, if your own healthy and loving and nourishing parent isn't present in you, that means that certain maladaptive mechanisms run the show. And that is like a perfect bridge to the notion of the life traps. So
Yes.
these are maladaptive patterns that oftentimes like are formed in childhood. Doesn't always have to be that way, but oftentimes yes. And these sort of like run the show. So part of like becoming the healthy adult and the healthy and nourishing loving parent is on the one end connecting with those inner child parts, which is like the angry child, the hurt little child, and also happy Mickey or happy Corolla.
Yeah.
um, and in the other end is also learning to combat and weaken these old patterns needed for survival. So, as a final remark to answer your question, um, what you often see with people with burnout is that they have learned that they need to all constantly perform higher, more. They're extremely competitive in order to stay safe. So that's like a developed
Yeah.
schema. And the problem with that is that if it's never good enough, um, that's
Yeah,
going to
they
be quite
exhaust
miserable.
themselves.
Can be very exhausting. And this is
Yeah.
often what happens. And it can happen at all stages of life, where the system simply gets overrun at some point just because of exhaustion.
Yeah.
Same with people pleasing, for example. If you have to people please all the time, that means that your state of being depends on who's externally there, and also your sense of safety. So that can be very exhausting to constantly monitor, am I safe? How should I show up? Should I smile or not? Should I be polite? Should I, this is very exhausting for
Wow.
people.
Yeah. Incredible.
So I would say, like, mostly people that have outliers in that realm, and to be quite frank, I think more than half of the human population has, in some extent, outliers. For some, it's more problematic than others. But it's not like, let's put it this way, I have never met someone who was perfectly healthy, didn't have any single flaw on one of these.
We're in Earth School, so we came here to learn, and so
Exactly,
for sure,
yeah.
that's part of what we're going through. I think that in many ways, and thank you for the description, because you've always said that I wasn't your typical case, your typical client.
Correct.
But for me, you were extremely helpful, and I learned a lot about myself in the work that I did with you. I think that as you describe them, these people are pioneers in many ways, because it's not so much that they are exceptional, it's more that they have been, through life circumstances, exposed to things that in the main don't happen. So because people, and I was really triggered by something you said early on, which is you work with dysregulation, and people want normality, whatever that feels like to them. And normality entails, at even the highest cost, not being dysregulated. So avoiding the dysregulation. And that means that you're latching onto mechanisms that help regulate you artificially, and the kind of natural, wise, intuitive self gets subdued to the point that it no longer has a say in the matter. And then people eventually have to catch up with that and catch up to themselves, because if they don't confront themselves through the dysregulation, they cannot regulate again into that flow of being themselves. And I was making some notes of the things that you mentioned. I think there's a few things I'd like to unpack. So you talked at some point about coming home to ourselves. Now, for a large part of the human population, and of course you do work with white collar clients, but still we are human. And for a large part of the human population, coming home to ourselves is not a safe place to be.
Yeah. And that's actually beautiful that you point that out, because an act of love is feeling your anger, feeling your sadness, feeling the ways you were wronged, feeling basically the whole range of negative emotions too. It's positive and negative. And what I mean with coming home to ourselves is to no longer abandon our inner child. So as a metaphor you could see, is if you've always been running in survival mode, maybe your parents were too. It's not from a place of ill intent that they didn't want to take care of you emotionally. I mean, most of us also see two ways in that, right? Like taking care financially and like physically, and then also taking care mentally and emotionally. But I would say coming home to ourselves is also a part of really connecting with our inner child. If we struggle with workaholism, the child part has been abandoned massively. There was never time for this child to be sad, to be angry, to be hurt, to mourn a loss. So coming home to ourselves is an act of love, and it's not the most comfortable thing always to do.
No, it's and I can imagine that people will do whatever it takes to avoid that.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that too, because especially in the modern age, often, if you look at like ways how we avoid, we think of alcohol, we think of drugs. But the reality is we eat our emotions away. We scroll our emotions away. We are all the time really, really busy. At any cost, we want to avoid being by ourselves. Um, and
Oh, and even in the more kind of enlightened spaces, we meditate our emotions away. We do,
yeah,
all kinds of so-called spiritual activities, or even reading a book, or,
yeah,
it's all about engaging in something that is not us.
yeah.
So
And
even,
I really love that you mentioned it too, because like, for example, if you're really into self-help, in and of itself, that can be great. But if you're all the time working on self-help, you're also rejecting yourself. You're all the time messaging yourself, you're not good enough. We need to work harder. We need to fix. We're
right,
not good. You know what I mean? And
yes,
that's quite like a paradox, because also, for example, with workaholism, you can be workaholic to recover from your workaholism.
yeah,
And I think especially in the age that we live now, um, we don't yet see, or not all the, I think there's a little bit sometimes confusion about what's addiction and what is not. So workaholism, or like perfectionism, or being like busy all the time, is oftentimes in the older culture, I would say. I do feel like it's changing now, is really applauded as like, hard working, that's good, and you almost receive like a medal for that. And the other side of honoring yourself, stepping back, doing less, maybe doing good enough work instead of like striving for perfection all the time, that's not really so much applaud.
So tell us a few examples, obviously anonymous, of successful clients. Like, these have been people that I've coached or you've coached, who really went through a transformation and inspired you back.
Well, I would say, first of all, it's you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you, and first and foremost, especially because I remember you asking about needing the mothering energy. And of course, I'm very committed and dedicated to, really like offering the support. And it was something that was a little bit out of my comfort zone. And it actually, but it was really beautiful
Yeah.
because it became a synergy. You know what I mean? Because it allowed me, you were gracious with me, because you also realized like, hey, that's a little bit new territory for me. And I think what I really loved about your story in particular is that you really dove in, meaning you were willing to question everything. And I think that's also your nature, funny enough, to question everything, to go deeper, to seek for different truths, different paths. And yeah, I would say when you talk about like success, that's also a good one, right? What's success? So I would like to start off with that. I would say success is that you have wealth, meaning not necessarily financial, but like wealth meaning a regulated nervous system that you get to create from a place of abundance, that you have enough space for all the facets that make you a beautiful, well-rounded human being. So instead of just being, I'm a lawyer and now I'm 40, 60 hours a week, a lawyer until my 65th, and then call it a day, that you really get to embrace all the unique parts that make us up as human beings. I would say that's definitely success in my opinion. And then, to start off, I think in your story, that's very clear that you've been playfully creating all that you've done, including this podcast where you get to where you have an outlet for your curiosity, your always hungry brain, looking for solutions and patterns, and diving deep. And then if I look at some of the other clients, let me think
I think because to me that the way that you've described them, typically there is this very confrontational energy in the beginning of going into reintegration. So people did not see it coming. So there is the awareness of this kind of maladaptive behavior. Probably takes quite a bit of time, because people are in a space of suffering. And that's typically not when we want mirrors, but
Yeah.
that is your work.
Yeah. I would say like one recent item that comes up is I had a client that came in on paper, it was depression, right? And then eventually, as we started talking also in our format, what we mentioned before, most of the work we do is digitally, also anonymously at times, just with a phone call. Sometimes people prefer we can also do in person or face to face, or like digitally, so as like we're doing now. But one of the things, let's call him Mark. So Mark came in, he was very quiet, barely talked, there was nothing, like I really had to like take everything out of him. And on paper, it was like depression. And in all fairness and reintegration, I love it when people share their stuff with me. Legally, they're not entitled to share that at all. But what I thought was so beautiful is like we really like started connecting. Like it was a very slow start, you know, repetitively, like getting to know each other better, building trust. And then by focusing more on, yeah, as I said before, like with Revive, we focus mostly on like holistic well-being. So really creating like space for the individual to cater to what they need in that moment, whether that's rest, structure, or yeah, all the facets of the human experience. And what was so beautiful that at a certain point in time, there was the spark came back. And the spark came back because as he started to feel more comfortable and we dove in deeper into certain subjects, he started, you know, he shared with me that it wasn't necessarily depression. He was actually battling an addiction. And he was looking treatment for this. He was also going to a psychologist and psychiatrist. And he's been getting like really intensive treatments. And we started working more and more on, you know, well, what's that ikigai? What's that spark? What makes life worthwhile, right? Like, what are some things that makes you feel expansive, that you look forward to? Well, in his case, he was super good in strategy, like high-end strategy, and that's what he loved. But he also had a really big love for animals, and so he started working with a friend, doing like certain like hobby projects, like for strategy projects. And then at the same time, he started also working at an animal shelter to work in like take care of dogs. And what was so, and that made me pinch actually at some point, that I get to do this job. As in, of course, I get paid via the employer, but the reality is I get to be paid to love people, to really see them, to create space for them to show up how they are without judgment, but invite curiosity. And with him, we started working on building a structure into his life, doing fun activities. Really, like at some point we did like creative stuff too. So he started making videos with animals. He worked with animals. Then he had this like hobby project where he still got to like craft his strategic abilities. Bear in mind, this person, when he's high performing, he makes an insane salary for just a couple of hours a week. So you see also the dichotomy. And as we dove deeper, and that's why I'm trying to be like very with privacy. What turned out was there was a huge life trap present, which was very malicious, very destructive. And that life trap was the defectiveness life trap. And what we also did, and this was actually like also for myself as a coach, really insightful. With a lot of life traps, there are pros and cons, right? You can think of like people that have the high relenting standards life trap. They're incredibly successful. They ace it everywhere. They're like incredible entrepreneurs. They have amazing design, amazing creative output, you name it. The question is, so that's the positive. The question is also, at what cost does that come? You get to be successful, but you're not happy or not fulfilled. Because unrelenting says it's never good enough. There's always more, there's always better. So that's where you can see like the dichotomy with like positive, like the advantages and disadvantages. So with the specific clients, with defectiveness, which is the life trap that surrounds shame, I am bad, there's something wrong with me. You know, when we dove into the pros and cons analysis, that's a tricky one, right? Because how can that possibly be good? And then we found out that him developing that belief system of there must be something wrong with me, I'm broken, kept him from experiencing the reality that he couldn't trust and rely on his primarily caregivers. So in that instance, how did it help him to believe that he's wrong and that he's unworthy and that he's a blah, blah, piece of blah, helped him make sense of the reality that in a way, it was better that he was bad, because it's for a child, especially a child, right, that is 100% fully dependent on their parents, their primary caregiver, that can be a fatal dose of anxiety, realizing that, you know, what you're dependent on is really malintended and malicious. And so we started working with like several like different tools to combat that. Of course, we don't really do treatment. At the end of the day, we do reintegration. Luckily, this person has also a lot of treatment.
Yes.
And it's been really going upwards. And it just joys me because now when I talk to him, like you could see the spark is back, the life is back, and he's still like in his journey, right? He's still not fully recovered.
Yeah.
But what you see in the past, it was always high performing crash, really to the point with like homelessness as the crash, right? Like, and then the high point meaning making, like an extraordinary
obscene amount of money, as you said.
And and that's, if you ask me, like what success looks like, it's like really like not treating symptoms, understanding what are these symptoms trying to say. Well, what's actually going on here? Where does this come from? Be curious and again integrate too, right? So there was a phase in our sessions where he barely spoke. There was a lot of anger, a lot of sadness. He could barely speak about it. He was so angry. And it was because of the EMDR, like it all brought it up. And and that's what I mean. Like when I talk about like this home for being or a place to come home to is that there's space to show up where you're at in your journey.
When people do this, there is also kind of a backdrop of the cultural narrative, the presumed normality, the highly polarized society in which you are pigeonholed, because if you are not this, then you must be that.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I try and become the observer. Yeah. So the way how I see it, and it's also thanks to Eckhart Tolle. I read many of his books, actually all of his books, and the Power of Now, like literally I think 5 times, and the New Earth maybe 2 times. So I think it's like becoming aware of the polarization and seeing it for what it is. But the thing is like I've also learned that you cannot really make people I feel consciousness is created through suffering, where at some point you realize like there's got to be more, or the pain leads you to the enlightenment. If that makes sense.
It makes sense, but it's I would use the past tense for that. I think that in terms of the evolution of human consciousness, we are moving away from the need to suffer in order to learn. And we are increasingly moving towards a space where this awareness allows us to experience the joy of learning. And so we are at a pivotal moment, and that is part of the societal collapse of structures, the revelation of, and by revelation, I don't mean something spiritual and metaphysical. I just mean the coming to the light of excesses from, I don't know, the Catholic Church through to, war. It's becoming increasingly visible because we are being able to see the absurdity. We couldn't see the absurdity when we were in a consciousness space of suffering. We can see the absurdity now because we are moving to a consciousness space of joy, and therefore that which involves suffering starts to become absurd and unacceptable. So I think we are in that moment of transition to that. But many of us, including myself and yourself and generationally, are still carrying the scars of using suffering as a means to grow and learn.
I love that you mentioned that. And I just, like, something that just came to mind is this little lamp here.
Like, what's that on the screen? So there's a lamp on the screen for those listening.
So you asked me, right, like how, and I initially answered with like being the observer, like how do you combat this polarization? What I found to be really like a really beautiful metaphor is this lamp. Let's say I think this lamp is yellow, and to you this lamp is blue. Now, what happens with polarization if you say that this lamp is blue, and I'm identified with my thought, with my belief, then it's going to feel like an attack. No, it's yellow. No, this is yellow. You're wrong. I'm right. And what I've learned, if you look at like embracing duality, we can both be right. This can be for you blue, and this can be for me yellow, and we're both right. Yes. The alternative is why would I feel attacked about this? If I look at your life story, for example, right, and I look at everything like how your thoughts are formed, you're a human being, you're a clever cookie. I'm sure you must have had your reasons why you see this as blue. And I think it's like we're shifting, especially like with identity politics, that works really well in creating polarization, because now, I get to be attacked. You know what I mean? Yes. If you think this is blue and I'm identified that this is yellow, then there's like a friction there. So I would say I would then in that case like introduce like a metaphor like this. And I believe actually that I've done that in the past sometimes, because it kind of distangles it. It's like at the end of the day, it's just a thought. And that's also what Eckhart Tolle talks about.
Yes.
But and of course, because of our pain body and of our beliefs and also the past, it's not so easy, right? Because, for example, let me be extra vulnerable here. I'm technically officially part of the LGBT community. So if I'm fully identified with being gay, and I think like, oh, this is great, blah, 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 and you might think like, hey, no, I think this is super bad, blah, 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 like this is a choice for you, blah, blah, blah. Technically, of course, that would trigger me crazy. Because I would be like, yeah, but because of people like you, that's why the closet is there. And, people like me get murdered in other countries and da, 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 da. And then you get become unconscious. And Eckhart Tolle, he talks so well, even with Oprah Winfrey about this. And I think for the listeners, if they ever are interested in this topic, I think it would be really interesting to dive into that series. Oprah then also talks about, just like with gay people, with Black people, yeah, but how can we deny our past, right? How can we condone? How can we not say anything about it? And they go deeper into that. But what I've learned, if I look at my own journey, is, being gay is like something bad. And, if, people find out you're gay, you're cut off, you're thrown on the streets. If I look at all these experiences, I might actually empathize and think oh, it's perfectly normal for you to maybe think that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes. I think that what is emerging, again, to the point of moving away from lessons of suffering to lessons of joy, is that it triggers people's fear of being
Yeah.
the pariah, being the left out, being the one, the outcast. So
Yeah.
people are reacting not so much because of the person presenting the information or exposing the information, but they are reacting by projecting their fears out into the world. And
Right.
if we go very deep into the space of love, we can see that perhaps that is our role without exposing us to unnecessary violence. Of course not. That's not what I'm saying. But by being our authentic, true, unapologetic selves, we are allowing the others to release the fear.
Yeah.
And this is super important because you talk about Eckhart Tolle, and Eckhart Tolle talks about the ism. So the lamp, the blue and yellow lamp that you were talking about, to those who can't see it, because some people are listening to this episode, does not have a color. It only has ism. It is a lamp.
Yeah.
And we can just let it be.
Yeah.
But there is this incredible, we talked at the beginning of the episode about this force. What is that force? What do we call it? And this is something that is culturally imposed. When we are pre-verbal, we are experiencing the world. We are always in the present moment. We can't be anywhere else because we don't know how to do it. We are just living. As we become verbal, things start getting labels. And we call that reality because it's the consensus we have. So a certain sensation, for example, the couch where we get to sit on to be together with the adults when we are very small, feels a certain texture, holds our weight in a certain way, and then one day the caregivers, the parents say, this is couch, and we call that a couch. And then we engage with other people and everyone's calling different things couch because they're experiencing different things, but we think that we're saying the same thing. And so to this point, we need to grow beyond our verbal abilities and into our more experiential, lived abilities, sensorial abilities. And we, as humanity, have received probably the biggest transformational gift that we could have thought of to do that, and that is AI. Because AI is exposing the nonsense of these verbal structures because it can't experience. And therefore, when AI says something that does not make sense, how do we know it doesn't make sense? Through our senses. Because it's nonsensical. And so I think we are returning to this space, and that you and your work at Revive are really kind of pioneering that and trying to find ways to do that. No one knows. You don't know. As humanity, we are going through this process, and as you said beautifully, evolving in time. Evolving through our actions, through our experiences, through our feelings, through our losses, through our wins, through our everything that happens to us is evolutionary and transformational in that way. What is the future you dream of, Mick? If we were to fast forward maybe 5-20 years into the future and people would be more integrated, they won't need reintegration anymore because they would be integrated already, right?
Yeah.
So you would be out of a job, you'll have to figure something else out, but the world would be a very different place. Can you paint us a picture and describe what that might be like?
I think in that world, we live more from the heart. So we live, I would say, more in balance. We embrace duality. We are playful. We try different things. I don't even like the word failure because I think it doesn't really exist. Like it's only like you learn or it's like what you had expected. But we play, we're out in the field, we're experienced. And I would say in the ideal world, right, I'm going to dream big, there would be a redistribution of wealth where we still get to work, but we get to work from a place of abundance. I think that would be the biggest gift because I feel so strong about this. every person that lives a fulfilling and authentic life, everyone wants to contribute their light, wants to shine their light in this world, wants to contribute. There's no one, even if they win like 10 million in the lottery, that decides, oh, I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch TV all day and like call it a day. I would say the only time that would be is if it's part of the psychological dysfunction. If someone has an avoidant personality disorder, or if someone is so extremely, maladaptive, then that would be. But I've literally seen in my own practice, everybody wants to contribute. And I would love for the system to evolve to facilitate us where it becomes a system that optimizes our well-being.
What would someone from that space say to us? Like, you guys, I can't believe you're not seeing it. What would they say to us?
I think they would say dare greatly. As so Brené Brown. So to dare greatly and move into the unknown, break away from the old structures. We're more powerful than we think we are. And the funny thing is, we can't change the world, but we can change the world. Meaning, by changing our inner world, we can change the world, our outer world. And that's why I think there's this balance of like integration, right? Like reflection, like going within and then going outside and like balancing that in seasons. But I would say, yeah, my biggest wish, I just get happy just thinking about that, is that the structures would facilitate our well-being. And that we get to live balanced life from a place of nervous system regulation. Like as you see in nature, there's like two ducks, they fight, bop, 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 they shake it off, and done. Peace, love again. That we get to release our pain body, that we get to create from a place of love and abundance. And gosh, what a beautiful world would that be?
Yeah, amazing. Yes, and it's possible. It is possible.
Yeah.
It's just us that keep sabotaging that idea because it feels so dreamlike. But it is possible for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us, what inspires you? What are things you read? So you mentioned Eckhart Tolle, you mentioned the Oprah series. We're going to add those to the show notes. Is there something else that you think for our listeners, you need to read this, you need to check this out?
Yeah, first and foremost, I mean, the holistic psychologist, Nicole LePera.
Yeah.
She has democratized psychology and self-help, instead of, oh, you have to go to a psychologist and you have to go to a psychiatrist. And that's very exclusive, only for the very few, only if you're really like fallen off the beaten path, then you go there and then you can be well. To share and promote accessible tools and like create education and be, it's just when you talk about mother energy, oh man, I think she like resonates that energy into this world. And I believe now she has like more than 12 million followers. She's really, really grand. And what I love is that it empowers us. And of course, with self-help, we often think like, oh, just being egocentric and your boundaries and your needs, yada, yada, yada. But what if you talk about also like really the healthy adult is, at the end of the day, we are human beings. We need each other. And being a healthy, loving, nourishing parent, if you want to have healthy relationships, it means also understanding and seeing someone else and finding compromises. But I do believe that it starts with, if you can accept and see all facets of you and handle your emotions, you can also do that with other people.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I would say like, she would definitely be like number one. Eckhart Tolle for sure. I like Gabor Mate also. Bessel van der Kolk are really interesting as well. On The Body Keeps the Score. How like physiologically, like explaining why, we keep repeating certain patterns is very insightful. I would say those are some of the few, but I'm always like, what I've learned in life is there is no ultimate answer. There's no perfect state of being. Like the whole life, I'll probably in 10 years from now, I'll look at this episode and be like, what was this kid talking about? Oh, you didn't, and I think that's also the beauty that we get to evolve and we get to learn and we get to change and we get to like full circle.
Where can people find your work?
I think that's the website.
Okay.
Or maybe, LinkedIn could also be like, maybe we can share some of those.
We will
like,
add
links
to the
down
show
below.
notes your website, 𝘍𝘰𝘊, which stands...
.nl/en, if you're for English.
Okay.
But yeah, we offer like Dutch, English, Spanish, German.
Okay. Yes, indeed. Multilingual. And we will add your LinkedIn as well. And so our last question on the podcast is linked to something I wrote in Change Ahead back in 2013, which is the so-called quest for questions. When we enter the unknown, we don't have answers because, well, we can't. So the way to find our path through the unknown is to ask questions. So as you look to the future and based on what you've done, what you've experienced, your work as you've just described it, what would be your next question?
Oh, that's a really good one.
What do you wonder about?
What do I wonder about? How we can navigate back to ism. I think so. Yeah. I think that would be my question. How can we navigate back to ism? Because we're all with new social media and the inner circles, but I've witnessed myself, whether that was in New York, Madrid, Glasgow, wherever I am in the world, that when you meet people in a park, just randomly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most people, they're really solid. And the reality is, if you just get to know each other, forget about all these labels, all these things, that people like get along actually really well. That people, that we learn that we can be trusted and we are like social creatures and we want to connect. So that would conclude that my next question would be, as you perfectly said it before with the ism, how do we navigate back to ism?
Yeah. How do we become human beings instead of human doings?
That's it.
It's the conundrum of our time.
Do you hear the paradox in that? Do you hear the paradox in that?
Yeah.
Because we're with the mind. We ask the question.
Yeah. But it's what we know how to do. And that's why we keep doing and we keep doing and we keep doing instead of falling into being. And we need one another to remind ourselves of that. Which is why I thank you for your amazing work and for being part of Transforming Worlds, Mick. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Carola. What a joy it's been to be on your podcast. Like, I'm so proud of you. And it's been such a joyous experience to talk with you, and also slightly uncomfortable because you're the one asking the questions now and I get to be the one to talk. But really, thank you so much for having me and also all the work you do. And I keep looking out for all that you create and all that you endeavor and explore. And I'll see you in the ism.
Thank you.